Hi, my friends. So, a number of viewers asked me to talk about handguns, and of course, I own handguns. They're so fun to shoot, and I own modern handguns and Glocks and all the rest of them. But there's not that much of a story to tell about them. They're shooting machines, and I'll probably do a video on them. Um, but there are people a lot better than me at shooting Hickok 45 and so on. Shooting the metal plates and whatnot. So I went into the vault and I got out some handguns that maybe you don't see every day. This Smith & Wesson Model 2. I don't know the exact date of manufacture. I probably could look it up and so on, and then it would be a history lesson. But as a collector, more you're interested in the mechanism. So I'll just show you how this thing works and why I like it. So it releases by this latch here, and that allows the barrel to pivot upwards. And then that allows the revolving cylinder to be removed. Now I presume that people didn't have 15-shot magazines or 7-shot magazines. They just maybe had an extra cylinder. You just drop it in, close the action, you're ready to go. Now, a spur trigger is not exactly the safest type of trigger, but it worked at the time. And if you think about it, this handgun back in 18 something was able to fire 6 shots. It's 32 rimfire. But by now you know me. I decided I had to fire this thing. I looked everywhere for 32 rimfire, and there is 32 rimfire ammunition available, but at the time I was desperately wanting to shoot this handgun. I couldn't find any. So I made some rounds, and it's not that difficult to do. You just have to offset the primer and do things like that. But anyhow, what I can tell you is that this gun operated perfectly. It still locks up solid. There's no problem with this mechanism, and it gives you 6 guaranteed shots. You can see the cylinder revolves. With revolvers, the timing is important, and you can hear the lock work. Everything's perfect, and it has Smith & Wesson bluing. There's a name for this bluing, I just don't remember right now. The sights are a little crude. You can see them. You can see them once the hammer's down. But you wouldn't have any trouble hitting, for example, a Coke can at 20 yards, which for a handgun I think is fine by any measure. And it's single action, so you have to pull the hammer back. And because it's rimfire, you're never going to break this firing pin, because really, if you look at it, this is asking a lot of the camera person, but there really isn't a firing pin in the usual sense of the word. The hammer is the firing pin, and it's hitting the rim of the cartridge with that edge, and it's hardened steel. So who knows how many rounds this has fired? Maybe a lot, maybe not so many. But Smith & Wesson Model 2, just a great piece of history and a great start to a company that's thriving today and making handguns that wouldn't look anything like this. Anyhow, so this is cool. I wish somebody would make 32 rimfire ammunition. Next one, I'm sure this is on the web someplace. I saw this advertised, I don't remember where, Pepperbox. And this predates, of course, the Smith & Wesson and the Colt. It might have overlapped with the Colt, I don't know. But you can see the concept. You pull the trigger. It's a double action revolver. But unlike the Colt and the Smith & Wesson, you can see the cylinder in these designs has the 6 shots, and then there's 1 barrel. And in this case, you have 6 barrels. And it's a double action, so each time you rotate, there's a lot of finger pressure here. I can feel the resistance. And then the hammer falls. Now, these were all populated by percussion caps. So you had to load, powder, and then your round ball or mini bullet. I don't know which they used. I don't think I fired this one. I fired another one. Anyhow, it's a very cool design, and you can see how thinking about firearms, like most things, is evolutionary. So somebody probably looked at this and decided, well, why don't we just cut this off here and have a cylinder and have one barrel fixed somehow, like the Smith & Wesson or the Colt. But it's a good design in its own right, and it still works. Like I said, this one I don't think I've fired. You just have to put caps on. And oh, there's a shroud missing. See these screws? These screws used to hold a shroud that went on here to cover the percussion caps. And the reason for the cover was that when you fire, there's a potential that the percussion cap would ignite other percussion caps, so you'd get sequential firing or firing all at once. So they didn't want that, so there was a shroud. But I don't know, the shroud went away or whatever, so I'd have to make another one, which isn't a big deal. But I thought I'd make this video and just show you this Pepperbox. A lot of fun to own and look at. And apparently they were extremely popular. And there's another website which I like, Forgotten Weapons, and he has a a more thorough evaluation of these from a historical point of view. And I don't know, the patent on this thing, it says 1845. So anyway, old gun, still works. And then even older is this Flintlock. I mean, this is an amazing pistol, and it's even more amazing to tell you how I came across it. I had a rental property, and without going into details, this was in the wall. Like it was a story out of a book or a movie or something. I was renovating, and anyhow, so this thing crawled out of the wall and fell into my hands, and I have no idea how long it had been in the wall, but I guess people hide guns for whatever reason. And here it is. So then I thought, well, this is great. I just won the lotto, but as usual, I didn't win the lotto. And I looked it up on the web, and you can see that Collectors Firearms in Houston had a Model 6. I looked it up. So I mean, I found $3,000 in the wall, which is kind of nice. But it's a Model 6, which I don't know what that means. This is a Model 5, and again, I'm asking a lot from our camera crew here. That's a Model 5. And that may mean something, I don't know. If you do know, please write me. This is easily, like I said, I own Glocks, I own Smith & Wessons, I own all kinds of handguns. This is easily my favorite handgun because it really means something, not that the others don't. But you can see it has all of the correct components. I'm sure it would work. I don't think I've fired it. It even has the leather holding the flint. I think you call this the frizzen. There's one type of powder that goes in here. Then I'll show you a cool thing. You probably know a lot more about it than I do, but that's the ramrod. And I think somebody told me that if for some reason you forget to put powder in the barrel, or there's a misfire, then you can remove the round ball or bullet with you screw it into the lead. That's just what they said. Somebody else told me that's for the patch. Anyway, people tell me lots of things, and it's all interesting, but it's still complete and it's here. And as this historical document shows, there's the Old English. So this is from the police department. I don't know if we've captured. You can see the inscription, and it dates back to 18-something. Brass barrel, and some police officer way back when was not running around with a Glock or anything else. They had this, and they had to, I'm assuming, charge the frizzen and then pull back the hammer and tell whoever was doing something they weren't supposed to be doing to stop. And you can see clearly London, number 5. So there it is. And I'm amazed that these flat springs, of course I took out the lock because I study that kind of thing. And the flat springs and leaf springs that operate, you can see a spring right here. I mean, these were made hundreds of years ago, and they still work perfectly. Mostly the firearms industry has moved to coil springs, and obviously for a reason, but the flat spring is not to be underestimated. And the gun maker here is Parker, and it's noted actually in the historical text here. You probably can read it here, I'm not sure. British Police Pistol by W. Parker, and you can see here Parker. This is all very difficult to film, but it's fantastic. And if and I owned it for years after it fell out of the wall. And I'll flip around the other side. You can, oh, you've looked at all the inscriptions. So anyway, I was going to fire it because I couldn't see any reason not to, but I just didn't get around to it. But I have no doubt that it would hold the pressure as it did before, and work as it was intended to. So there you have my first handgun video. As I've said a few times, these are not modern semi-automatics. Those are more machines or tools, and they're fantastic, and everybody loves them, and I do too. But I thought this is something else that I could show you that maybe you wouldn't run into any place else. And you've got 3 on the table here, and you know, when you own something like this, you own some, not just mechanisms, but you own some history. So that means something. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.